friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Bethany, and on this channel we talk about the false beliefs taught to women inside of the church. So if that resonates with you at all, go ahead and like this video and share with a friend and subscribe to my channel, and always ring the notification bell so you'll be notified every single time that I drop a new video. And go follow me on Instagram, it's right over here, and subscribe to my Outspoken Exfundie Newsletter, which is down below in the description box, because you'll receive videos 12 to 24 hours early before they go public. Okay, today we have a church horror stories. We haven't done this in a few months, and so I'm pretty excited about it. If you have a church horror story or some type of experience from the church you attended while you were growing up, or attended once, whatever, go ahead and share it with me if you would like, of course. Share it with me by going in the description box below. The link to the Google Doc, or the Google form rather, is under Church Horror Story submission. Go ahead and put your horror story in there. If you want it anonymous, just don't put your name in it, or put in the note section of your story that you want to keep it anonymous. The reason why I love to do these, number one, it shines a light on your experiences and shows other people the experiences that other people have in the church. And number two, in writing down your experiences, it can help with the healing process. It has helped me, it has helped others in writing their experiences down, and hopefully it would help you as well. So let's get into today's horror stories. I believe we have 3 different stories, so let's get into it. I haven't read through these at all. I've just put them into a document so I can read them here with you today. So story number 1, here we go. What the church did to me at 19 years old in early 2011 gave me post-traumatic stress disorder, which wouldn't be diagnosed until 2020. April 2011, I bought a plane ticket to go visit a friend. I had met him a year before at a Christian college youth conference. He fascinated me because he was a progressive Christian, and I had never encountered such a freeing, holistic, and healing way of experiencing Christianity before. We talked every day, and I decided that I wanted to spend a week and a half visiting him and his family in another state that summer. I had always had an adventurous and independent nature, so it seemed like a fun and grown-up thing to do. My intentions were innocent, wanting to see someone I deeply valued, exploring another part of the country, spending a little time away from the small community I had spent my entire life in. I was an adult now with my own money I'd saved up, and I figured I could make this decision for myself. My fundamentalist Christian community, however, did not see it that way. The moment news got out that I was a young woman, would be visiting someone who was male, all hell broke loose. I can understand that. My Christian friends had full-blown meltdowns, yelling at me and telling me that I would be ruining my reputation and theirs too, since they were associated with me. Oh my God. And when I say I can understand that, I'm coming from the narrator's point of view, obviously not the other people. Like, I can understand that the family, the friends were saying, because I've also been in that experience, like, hey, don't do this thing. It's our last name that's on the line. It's our reputation. Like, oh my God. Were we raised in the same family? My best friends and my very close sister fueled vicious gossip. They intentionally contacted people who were involved or affected by my decision to tell them the news. They told other friends, they told their families, they told youth leaders, they told the pastor, they even told my boss, who was part of our church. What? My parents knew that was happening, but did not do anything to stop it. They sided with my sister and reprimanded me for making her life more difficult, for stressing her out and damaging her reputation. Found out later some of the things being said about me, including that the ministry I was a leader with at my college is another town, apparently had low standards and low standards and loose morals for letting Sarah be a leader. Oh no. So apparently they thought an entire organization had low standards because one student on their leadership team planned to visit a friend of the opposite sex and his family for a week over the summer. You know, normal teenage kid stuff that I had missed out on. Being out of sight from the church for barely over a week was apparently reason enough to wreak havoc on my life. Not that it really matters, but I wasn't even staying in a house alone with him. It wasn't a romantic getaway by any means. I got accused of dating him and sleeping with him. Oh my God. Gossiping about me and disrupting their own community wasn't enough, apparently. So several peers from my church then proceeded to drive to my college, which was 45 minutes away and not associated with my family's church whatsoever, and physically approached students from my Bible study group there and told them to leave the ministry because my influence was so incredibly dangerous. They successfully convinced 2 students to leave, both of whom had previously really enjoyed our ministry and had expressed a deep sense of calling there. Both of the students who left were young women who ended up in abusive relationships with much older men shortly after following the advice to leave. It breaks my heart that neither of them had the support of their loving college community to help them through that time. But that's not all. Next, my boss at the Christian family farm I worked at, who is part of the same church and related to my best friend, lashed out on me when he heard about my upcoming visit. He started verbally and emotionally abusing me every day at work. He daily threatened to fire me and reminded me that he was watching me around our small town and that my actions represented his company. Oh my God. The company was already a terrible place to work as they offered low pay and controlled their employees' personal lives, making sure our decisions matched their religious standards. Yep, that's the thing. The bosses were incredibly manipulative, and they set up traps for their employees, like posting a very strict dress code in a discreet corner of the building without announcing it, and then reprimanding me when my shorts were an inch above the knee at the middle of the kneecap. Above the knee instead of at the middle of the kneecap. Oh dear Jesus. Every day at work, I had already constantly been on edge, terrified of breaking an unknown rule. But then again, that had already been every waking moment in the church for as long as I could remember. But once my boss heard the news, work conditions went from terrible to so intolerable I had to quit. I couldn't handle the daily panic attacks anymore. So now I was without an income too. Church friends kept coming up to me and telling me that other people whose lives had been ruined because they made poor decisions. Oh my jeez, this is awful. These people were no longer able to volunteer at youth group or lead worship or lead in any way in their church communities. That terrified me because as someone whose entire life is wrapped around in one insular community, this is the same as being told you will never be able to move up in your career ever again, and you will in fact actually be demoted. Yep. My heart was shattered when my best friend told me that she could no longer be seen with me in public because of the way my actions would represent her, and that the people would assume she supported my choices. All of this was only because I, as a female person, wanted to visit a friend who was a male person. That's it. To say I was extremely traumatized by this whole situation would be a gross understatement. Everything I'd ever known came crashing down around me. I'd always been the good Christian girl. I cared so much about doing the right thing and being close to God, but here I was painted as a Jezebel, a rebel, a slut, a wayward and worldly soul, a backslidden heathen who was throwing away her faith. I felt like I was drowning. I didn't know what was real or true anymore. Was I really a bad person? Was visiting my guy friend wrong? Was I trying to run away from God? I didn't think so, but maybe there were evil desires hidden in my heart. Surely It must be terrible of me to cause so much anguish for an entire community. But I had a deep internal sense of justice, and this just didn't feel right. In fact, this was infuriating. This didn't seem like what God would want at all. I would recant and minimize some of the damage, but I felt this was a sick and twisted way to treat me and decided to hold my ground. Hell yeah. I felt so unsafe and like I had never been safe. Even throughout my happy childhood, even when all my friends and pastors still liked me, because this insignificant, innocent decision I made, the smallest step towards autonomy, if it had happened any time in the past, it would have received the same reaction then too. I had felt safe only because I had luckily played by the rules. But if I had any time in the past made the slightest misstep in that minefield, I would have been blown to pieces then too. I had suddenly knew that all along I had been shakily balancing a tightrope since that very day I was born, and it was only that I had fallen off of it. It hit me that I couldn't trust anyone at all. My tight-knit family, my dearest friends, people I had known for 19 years, all of them betrayed me in an instant. If I couldn't trust the people I had known my entire life, how could I trust anybody new? If I couldn't trust people I had chosen as my closest support, my confidant, should I even trust myself, my judgment, my decisions? Even though this fateful decision to visit a friend permanently changed the course of my life and the fallout destroyed everything I had at the time, I have no regrets. Even though their reaction stole opportunities from me, such as the chance to have lifelong childhood friends, even though I now live with an incurable mental disorder, I stand firm in my choice. The fallout wasn't my fault. Good for you. I did nothing wrong. I was a normal young adult doing normal young adult things. Yes, exploring, traveling, making friends, adventuring, growing in my independence. I'm grateful that I escaped such a dangerous community that looked harmless on the outside, even if that is what it took. They might have destroyed the life I had with them. But today I have a far better, safer, healthier life that I own. It is mine and they have no control over me. They can't take anything away from me anymore. They controlled me for a while, but they went too far and they lost me. And now I am a hell of a lot happier and freer than any of them, and I bet they're jealous. Wow. That was so deep. For one, I am so proud of this person for not allowing their twisted, no, you did this, it ruined us. You did this, it ruined the reputation. I can't be friends with you because you did fill in the blank. It is so easy in religion to twist and justify the things that you did, not justify, but like twist the things that you did, innocent things that you did, into being something evil. Because she even said something to the effect of like, was there something in my heart that was evil? Was there something pushing me to go see a friend? Did I want to do something more? The church can twist the most innocent things into you blaming yourself for something that you actually never did, that you just wanted to have fun, that you just wanted to go visit a friend, whatever, but the intention was pure. But the church will twist that intention to make you feel like you did something wrong. And bravo to this person for not allowing them to get that part of her. My fiance and I were a few months away from being husband and wife when he was tragically killed in an accident. Caleb and I both left the evangelical church, but we both had a lot of traditional Christians in our lives still. It's hard to completely sever those ties. Totally understand. How evangelicals responded to his death and my grief was nothing short of horrific. I have a feeling of where this is going to go. Oh, okay. For instance, Caleb's evangelical family didn't include me in the planning of the funeral and informed me it would be at a church, which is not at all what myself or Caleb would have wanted. Imagine not including the widow in making arrangements. During funeral planning, church leaders interrogated me about Caleb's beliefs. The truth was, Caleb wasn't sure what he believed, which is a total valid place to land, especially after a lifetime of mistreatment from Christians. But it was incredibly tricky to talk about it in a way to appease church leaders while still being honest and honoring Caleb. One slip and he would be seen by the church leaders as an unbeliever, and everyone would agonize over his eternal conscious torment in hell. The funeral director snapped at me when I mentioned the words progressive Christian, saying, "I don't even know what that means. If he was unsaved, we know how to design a funeral for the unsaved. But a somber, hopeless service with a call to Jesus so no one else would end up in the same fate of hell was the last thing I wanted." So I assured them that he had followed God, which he had, far better than any of them. They seemed unconvinced, but relented and agreed to move forward with a service for the unsaved. Oh, no. I was clear with the pastor that I did not want an altar call or a proclamation of the gospel. This was a time to honor Caleb's life, not a time to pressure people there who loved Caleb into something that you would expect at a church service instead of a memorial one. This isn't a church service, I said. This is a service honoring Caleb's life, and I want to focus on that. Not everyone attending the service even feels comfortable in churches, but they are coming for Caleb as a way to love and remember him. I want to respect where they are at. Okay, that is more than reasonable. After some pushback and rudely informing me that for the service to take place on their property, it was required to mention Jesus in the gospel, they assured me it wouldn't be directed at the audience. During the funeral, however, the pastor threw in a come to Jesus moment anyway. They lied to and tricked a grieving widow. How Christ-like is that? But because I was mere months away from being Caleb's legal wife following the accident, his staunchly fundamentalist Christian father was put in charge of his financial accounts. Oh no. My father-in-law assured me that the estate would go to me once he sorted out the legalities, which makes sense because Caleb and I shared everything. However, 1 year later, I received a small check and was told that was all that was left of Caleb's life savings. However, Caleb's sister informed me a little bit later that her father had actually taken the rest of the money and done with it as he pleased because I didn't meet his standards for Christian womanhood, such as living with a partner before marriage. He called me cheap. He was intentionally punishing me financially because it was only part of my life he actually had control over. For people who claim to follow the Bible that tells them to take care of orphans and widows in their distress, they were missing the mark. Evangelical Christians treated me noticeably different once I was no longer officially connected to a man. They stopped respecting my privacy and my boundaries, and they would show up unannounced at the house. If I said I wasn't available, I would come home to find them in my yard waiting for me. They assumed that I could no longer keep up the place and talked among themselves about how I would need to find another place to live. They treated me like a child in a lot of ways and did not act like I was the owner of Caleb's things. Some of them tried to give Caleb's things away to church charities or take them for themselves. During the funeral, several Christians were overheard whispering about how Caleb was in hell right now. Oh my God. Several people said that it was God's will that Caleb died, and one Christian even told me that God took him while he could still squeak into heaven because he was on a hell-bent path. Following the funeral, there was a lot of gossip about me in Christian circles where people were speculating that I had done what I had done to deserve this, and talked about how God took Caleb away from me to bring me back to Jesus. A lot of Christians that gossiped about what happened never even reached out to me to tell me they were sorry for my loss or to offer any support. All they wanted to do was talk about it from a distance. That should be in like a Christian handbook. Like what to do as a Christian. Talk about people behind their backs. That is absolutely true. Some evangelicals had a different approach. People from my distant past who had not talked to me in years would reach out with incessant questions, more to satisfy their nosy nature and morbid curiosity than to offer any real help. The questions they asked me gave no real advantage in supporting me better. Christians who hadn't seen me in years expected intimate details about my life while offering no openness in return. They seemed to think I owed them answers. Some Christians took notice of my vulnerable state and tried to use it to proselytize me back to a conservative version of Christianity. They would ask me over and over for ways they could support me, but never responded with anything besides prayer. During the early days of grief, I created a GoFundMe to help with the financial burden associated with losing your life partner. I sent it out to everyone I knew and overall received a lot of support. Great. However, I noticed the pattern that the very same people who had practically begged me for ways they could support me before were the very same people to ignore the fundraiser. Not just decline to donate, but completely ignore. I sent private messages out to follow up, and 7 Christians who had been extremely close with only a few years back and who had been regularly harassing me about theology issues online since then completely ignored my multiple messages during the only time I was actually in need for their support. I now had a tangible answer for their relentless inquiries, yet they were uninterested. The only time they could actually do something to bless me, they chose not to. They didn't even have the decency to tell me outright they couldn't donate for whatever reason, which I probably would have understood. Instead, they turned a deaf ear to a grieving widow in crisis. I felt confused and betrayed. These people hadn't been just casual friends. I lived with 3 of them. 2 of them were mentor-like figures. One was such a close friend, they had listed me as their sister on Facebook, and for the other, I was their maid of honor. I noticed after being persistently ignored that I had written in my GoFundMe description that one of my financial needs was help with rent, because without Caleb's income, it was now double the cost. This innocent and totally normal remark about my very typical life tipped off already suspicious evangelicals that Caleb and I were living together before we were legally married. Somehow, helping me financially in an emergency would be a way to show support for our lifestyle, so they decided it was better that I suffered instead. Oh my God. One Christian actually responded to my follow-up message about the GoFundMe saying, "Oh, I didn't realize I was close enough to help." This person was apparently close enough to inquire about very intimate details of my life over the last few years, asking about my beliefs and ways they could pray for me, but they thought they weren't close enough to offer tangible support when asked. I received so much unsolicited advice. Evangelicals I barely knew were telling me how to navigate a tragedy they had never personally faced. They thought they had the instruction book for any situation and came at me authoritatively. They told me to trust in God, lean on Him, and go to Scripture, none of which was helpful and felt very patronizing. I wasn't allowed to be sad because I was supposed to have joy and hope in a better place. I wasn't allowed to be angry because it was God's will. I wasn't allowed to have questions because God's ways are higher than our ways. I wasn't allowed to feel lost because God left us an instruction book, the Bible. The offenses I described here were committed by evangelicals from separate churches and denominations that are in no way associated with each other. They are from different towns spread out across the state, and they represent all different age groups, from people my own age to people my parents' and grandparents' age. This is a consistent and widespread problem. The toxicity of evangelicalism has never been more evident to me than when I was at my lowest, when I was weak and defenseless, going through my darkest hour. Evangelicals had a chance to show me they had something worthwhile to offer, and they had the opportunity to be the hands and feet of Jesus, but all they did was abuse me and heap insult to injury. Evangelicals talk a big game, but when it was time for the rubber hitting the road to put their faith into practice, they caused additional harm time and time again. So far in my life, all my most painful moments have either been caused by evangelicals or made worse by them. I'm proud of myself for mustering the courage to stand up for myself in the midst of some very triggering circumstances when I had almost nothing left to give. If I had any doubt, I know 100 times over that I made the right decision leaving evangelical Christianity. Evangelicals themselves have shown me that. I don't think I have adequate words. Those stories are not just sad, but these are legitimately traumatizing stories. I'm so honored to be able for somebody to put trust into me to bring these stories out into the world. We have one more story. It is a bit shorter than the other, so we're gonna go ahead and read this one. Hey Bethany, my name is Luke, and I'm an 18-year-old gay guy from New Brunswick, Canada. Cool. And I really appreciate your content. Thank you so much. Anyways, let me spill the tea. Probably one of the worst experiences at church happened during one of my mother's Sunday school lessons. The student in the class were me, my brother, 2 sisters, and my friend who I will call OJ. Great. My mother spent several consecutive Sundays teaching all about how homosexuality is sinful and transgenderism is invalid and not God's design. Back then, I was still fundy Christian, and for some twisted reason, I reveled in hearing these things. I both loved hearing judgmental teaching about other people groups. That's funny. Did you ever... Oh, I was about to say... He put in quotes. Did you ever have this? I kind of did. Because it like made you feel superior, I guess. I both loved hearing judgmental teaching about other people groups, but hated it because this group included me. During the lessons, me and my brother went along with everything my mother said, but the other students pushed back against her teachings. For example, they pointed out how the Sodom and Gomorrah stories don't really have anything to do with the lived experiences of actual gay people. One of the most tragic things about this whole thing is that my mother was not only traumatizing me, but also my friend OJ. I later came out gay, and OJ came out as gay and trans. I developed horrible mental illness from hearing these things my whole life, and the trauma made me want to unalive myself for several years. Thankfully, OJ and I are both doing better and have moved away from our parents. That's great. That's great. Honorable mentions, he says. Conversion therapy was practiced in the basement of one of the local churches I used to perform at. What? I was taught young earth creationism as Christian school. Creationism at Christian school by someone who has a master's degree in biology. Weird. When I suggested an alternative, non-homophobic interpretation of the Garden of Eden story, my sister responded by slamming down her Bible on the ottoman and yelling, "Get behind me, Satan." I'm laughing because that's uncomfortable. Oh my God. I am so proud of you and your friend for leaving your family. Sometimes leaving your family, it might suck. It might suck because you might be close to your family, but when it comes to things like this and you disagree, when it's literally your life, man, you just got to get away. You got to get away from your from your family, from your small town, whatever have you, to find yourself and be around more accepting people. Okay. Well, I have to go. I need to hop on a meeting that started a minute ago. Okay, so I appreciate you so much. Again, if you want to send me your church horror stories or any experience that you've had inside the church, go ahead and click the link in the description box below. It's under the title Church Horror Story Submission. So go ahead and do that, and always remember that you are a fierce and powerful motherfucking woman. And again, I appreciate you so much. Share this video with a friend. Be sure to like and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.